This video is being filmed the day after the historic U.S. Supreme Court case decision to overturn Roe versus Wade essentially affected women's reproduction rights throughout the United States, so young women today will have fewer rights than their mothers or their grandmothers did. Now, this decision happens just several days prior to a new moon in the zodiac sign of Cancer, which is conjoined both the black moon Lilith and asteroid Lilith. This new moon also aligns with the planetary north node of Jupiter. These are some of the most important archetypes and placements that we can be looking at using astrology in our lifetime. I could make dozens of videos about Lilith, and I still feel it would barely scratch the surface how much attention, care, and restoration is needed to this archetype. This is, again, going to be extremely relevant to our species evolution. I would honestly much rather speak to these dynamics in poetry or prose. However, in this video, I'm going to do the best that I can to communicate these parts. What is Lilith? What is the black moon Lilith? What is asteroid Lilith? How can we work with these astrological placements and archetypes not only at this time, but in future times? How can we understand the importance of the zodiac sign of Cancer and using this new moon in Cancer to take our species forward every single year, every single Cancer new moon? So to begin, who is Lilith? Lilith is one of the most complex, mysterious, multifaceted archetypes in our collective consciousness, at the forefront of our species evolution at this time. And I will explain why. First of all, this is an archetype that transcends and crosses many cultures. Very, very ancient origins, going all the way back to the matriarchy across different cultures around the world. So we know there's a Sumerian, Babylonian Lilith. We know there is an Abrahamic Jewish Lilith. Lilith shows up in the Zohar. Lilith shows up across occult and magical traditions. Now, there are two main components of the Lilith archetype. First and foremost is her association with the original, primal, primordial divine feminine. She is connected to sacred sexual rites. She is connected to the mystery of the feminine, which is, as we're going to talk about, a regenerative force. Now, there are two planets of the 10 main planets that are most feminine, and we know this to be the Moon and Venus. Both the Moon and Venus have so much to do with the power of regeneration, death, and rebirth. This is at the root of the feminine mysteries, that birth, death, and sexuality uses the same doorway. Therefore, the tantrikas, the sacred prostitutes, and the ancient matriarchal holders would use sexuality for healing, for regeneration, and many of these traditions and mysteries were lost throughout the historic period of patriarchy. That's where we get the other main facet of the Lilith archetype, which is Lilith is a feminine, mysterious, misunderstood primordial power that is demonized by patriarchal religion. And this again happens in different cultures, in different mythos, where the original divine feminine becomes a succubus or becomes a demoness who births demons and murders children. Some of Lilith's mythos is that she's a witch that flies around murdering and vampiring children and men, usually in the succubus sexual vampiring type of force. So that is where the original Lilith, who has her origins in Babylon, becomes rewritten throughout many thousands of years into being a demoness or a succubus. This, for example, is her most famous mythological origin in Abrahamic traditions, coming from the Garden of Eden mythos, where Lilith is actually Adam's first wife. And this is where Lilith is a symbol of the original divine feminine. Now, Lilith is called in patriarchal tradition snake-like, beast-like, dark, scary, again, vampire type of energy, birthing leeches, birthing demons. That's what Lilith's reputation became in patriarchal tradition. This is the story of the matriarchy. The original goddess is mysterious, snake-like, beast-like. The further we go back, archaeological evidence suggests that the ancient snake goddesses, the ancient river and ocean goddesses were our tradition across the world. Venus of Willendorf archaeological evidence suggests that women were regarded as goddesses, were worshipped as matriarchs throughout the world. Now in Greek tradition, an original Trinity goddess coming from the ocean, coming from the matriarchal Amazonian tribes, as we saw Medusa, Metis, and Pallas Athena as an original Trinity goddess. Medusa, the snake-headed goddess, is one of the original divine mother, divine feminine goddesses. In astrology, we understand the water trine, the water trinity. The trinity of spirit is the trinity of the divine feminine essence, spiritual essence. Cancer, the mother. Scorpio, the crone, the witch. Medusa, the snake, the beast. And then Pisces, the priestess, the high priestess. Okay? So, this snake, Lilith being the caduceus in the tree. You see, she also gets mixed and matched with Lucifer, who is simply Venus, who has the same exact mythos in many respects as Lilith, being an original divine feminine archetype who then gets scathed, slandered, and becomes the devil. From the most holy to the most profane is the story of Venus. And in Babylonian myth, Venus, Inanna, and Lilith are very connected. Lilith is Inanna's chambermaid. Well, Inanna, Venus, is the one who descends to the underworld and is raped, vilified, shredded to pieces before being reborn. This is Quetzalcoatl in Mayan tradition. Venus is the power of death and regeneration. That's what we're talking about with Lilith here as well. To go back to the patriarchal myth, in the story of Eden, Lilith is Adam's first wife, representing, again, this primordial feminine, mysterious, a little bit beyond, perhaps, Adam's male ego. As the story goes, when Lilith chooses not to be subservient to Adam, God punishes Lilith by kicking her out of the Garden of Eden. And then she becomes prostitute, demoness, succubus, and births so many demons. Okay? So that's the patriarchal myth, is Adam's first wife is kicked out of the garden because she will not be subservient to Adam. Now, this is what Black Moon Lilith in astrology represents. Black Moon Lilith is specifically a primordial feminine power or essence that is misunderstood, projected upon as wrong or unruly or beast-like or untamed, uncivilized, and therefore repressed, oppressed. distorted, hidden, made invisible, projected upon as a demoness, etc. Okay? So, Black Moon Lilith in astrology and in the natal chart, every single individual being connected to these cosmological archetypes, as we all are. We've all got a Lilith in ourself. We've all got a Lucifer in ourself. We are all a part of the regeneration of the fallen angels, which are actually our highest potential. We demonized ourselves. That's the very, very sad tragedy here, and the unfortunate truth. Venus is the best of the best. Heaven is Venus. Became hell, became the devil through the archetype of Lucifer. So it is with Lilith. This powerful repression creates anger, distortion, emotion, the experience of shame, the experience of impurity. There's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm wrong. I'm evil. I'm distorted. This is, again, a part of our species healing, the repressed divine feminine archetype. Black Moon Lilith in the birth chart is where this fundamental primordial feminine power is repressed due to patriarchal societal conditioning, which will happen for everybody. This is all a part of our collective soul's healing. Through going where we dare not go, breaking rules, exploring the off-limit content, getting to know our inner demons, getting to know our inner shadows. Those who follow my work know this is front and central in my teachings. We invite our demons to dinner. That's how we don't become evil tyrants. We get to know the evil in ourselves, which ends up not becoming evil at all. It ends up becoming the wounded inner child, or the repressed inner child, or the needs that we thought we shouldn't have or didn't have. So Lilith is coming into this feminine essence that's not understood, but it's a powerful part of our soul. And as we make amends with that part of ourself, we come into that feminine power, which is instinctual, which is intuitive, right brain, knowing through feeling and sensation. This is the whole realm of the divine feminine. Our species has long lost and forgotten this world. Can we imagine what the age of Scorpio must have been? Say 20,000 years ago, our species was on this planet. What was it like? I can only speculate, but I will say it must be something completely alien, where the amount of biological interaction, magnetism, psychic communication, it's like we lived in a completely different world, but our wisdom, our language, and our communication was not left brain, was not written or spoken. It was through animal magnetism, emotion, and sensation, all of which were demonized in the patriarchy. Emotions, sensations, having a body, having sexuality, all of the feminine mysteries were thrown out. That is what the archetype of Lilith is. She is the gateway to heaven through the body experience, living it, breathing it on this planet in the flesh. Is that a trap? No. Is that leading us away from enlightenment? No. But the man-made rules of society and religion made it so men could be in charge of women through controlling their sexuality and reproductive rights. That is what is at the root of patriarchy. Patriarchy began with men realizing that we are a part of the sexual process of creating children. And if we rewrote the story from women being the creatrix, having wombs, being the ones that are actually holding life in their bodies, well, men said, you know what, we're responsible for that. We hold the key. We hold the seed. It is through the controlling of women's reproductive rights and sexuality that patriarchy was born. Because women in their bodies hold the regenerative potency in their womb, in their body. And patriarchy and man-made religion said that's not the purpose of life. That's not front and central. We don't look at that. In fact, that's dirty, that's wrong, that's profane. Hence, we damned the potency of life itself. We damned the treasure and jewel of all humanity itself. We cursed ourselves as a species, and where we are as a collective is crawling out of that cesspool, is crawling out of the dark age on our hands and knees. That's why we see this historical overturning at this time. It is a reminder of where we stand in time, in between the dark age and something that's not the dark age, but we're not quite there yet. And our understanding of Lilith and the primordial feminine is absolutely essential in getting through this evolutionary gateway as a species. This new moon is on the planetary north node of Jupiter. Jupiter is the principle of awareness of the meaning of life itself. Jupiter is the cosmological truth that makes sense of all the bits and pieces of our life and experience. It has a purpose. We are on a journey. We're on the adventure of discovering something. It is significant. That's all Jupiter principle. Jupiter's truth, philosophy, religion. The planetary north node of Jupiter in the sign of Cancer for all souls on the planet at this time says we as a species lost and need to resurrect matriarchal values, which is a wisdom through empathy, feeling, and creating emotional safe space and support. The planetary south node of Jupiter is where we've historically created religion, which has been distorted Capricorn, forceful, man-made rules and regulations that are overforcing nature, that are restricting natural flow. And again, at the root of patriarchy is the controlling of women's reproduction. Period, menstruation cycle, fully demonized. Get out of here, get out of the temples, you're not pure. It's a demonization of the principle of regeneration. Death and rebirth, the most fundamental and powerful force at the root of all life itself, demonized historically in patriarchy. That's the planetary south nodes of Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn, all in Capricorn. All souls on the planet at this time has experienced this patriarchal oppression earlier in this life, reflecting past lives. We're crawling out of that cesspool as a species. This new moon on the north node of Jupiter is an opportunity to sow a seed intention for the missing wisdom, the missing philosophy, the missing religion, which is the wisdom of empathy, feeling. This wisdom of empathy is to introduce a reality which is circumstantial. You know where Jupiter goes really, really bad? When there's a one-size-fits-all. This is Shadow Sagittarius. This is where you get Crusadum, mission complex, holy wars. This is what we saw historically, still ongoing, right? That's what this historical overturning is. It is a holy war. It is a Bible verse reflected through billboard advertisements all over the United States that is not supposed to be connected with our government, as there should be separation of church and state. That is the principle of the USA, but the USA got ahead of itself. That's not where our collective consciousness is. That's not where our species consciousness is. We are still in the Dark Ages. We still have the circa 15th century Pope rearing his ugly head through these man-made regulations, restricting the sexual autonomy of women, as if we're going to go to heaven by restricting somebody else's freedom. Now, the astronomical significance of Black Moon Lilith is that this is the lunar apogee. So Black Moon Lilith is connected to the moon. Okay, again, this new moon is in Cancer. the moon sign. It's a very powerful time right now to bring all of this awareness and energy to the archetype of the mother, the moon. Our own emotional, feeling-based center is where this regeneration is happening. This is the wisdom of the moon. We regenerate through emotional feeling. We are not living our life when we're not feeling emotions, and our emotions are full spectrum. Anybody that you love, you're going to become separate from living this life on earth. That's going to be a painful, sad separation. If we love them, that doesn't mean that it's not something we can't enjoy. It can be extraordinarily rich and beautiful, uplifting, inspiring. This is what all artists, pioneers, and creatives are tuning into. The broken-hearted artist is the source of all creative inspiration and the source of all prayer in its most potent form. We can all use this historic overturning to collectively grieve and mourn the history of patriarchy and the imprisoning and damning of the feminine, which across the board, all genders experience this damnation. It has not been a man's world in patriarchy. Man lost the treasure of all life itself through these man-made rules that castrated us. So no, patriarchy's not been a man's world. It's been the loss of humanity when we oppressed the feminine essence. So astronomically, Black Moon Lilith is the lunar apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit furthest from the Earth. And that lunar apogee roughly goes through a zodiac sign a year. Now, for those tuning into astrology, I want to explain the technical astronomy of Black Moon Lilith. She's an erratic gravitational force, so she actually moves like this, and she can go back and forth between 3 signs in a matter of days or weeks. So that's the true position of Black Moon Lilith, and I recommend everyone know the true position of Black Moon Lilith in your chart. Because the mean position of Black Moon Lilith takes that erratic movement and smoothens it out. And that's not something to throw away either. That's useful information. Now, this new moon in Cancer has the mean position of Lilith and the true position of Lilith are exactly aligned with the new moon and asteroid Lilith. That's why I'm bringing so much attention to this archetype. She is very, very much up with this new moon. Both the asteroid, true and mean position of Black Moon Lilith coming together. By the way, for those who would like to learn about your natal Black Moon Lilith, I am going to publish Black Moon Lilith through all the signs and houses in my Astro School in July 2022. So if you'd like to learn that, you can sign up for my Astro School this next month of July. Now, the asteroid Lilith is not as much talked about, not as popular or renowned in, astrology community world, where Lilith is hot. This is, again, the forefront of our species evolution, very, very front and central feminist archetype. Good, wonderful. We need the resurrection of Lilith. Same with Pallas Athena, Medusa, Matisse, etc. The divine feminine, the divine mother, this divine trinity, the Holy Spirit, all the same. The Trinity goddess. The asteroid Lilith in astrology represents that original primordial feminine essence in its essence, in its original undistorted form. So asteroid Lilith is like the bright light of feminine wisdom that is leading her back to herself through this regeneration. So if Black Moon Lilith is the story of patriarchy, where Lilith gets suppressed and distorted, where there's this superpower that becomes like a loaded spring. She's angry. She's full of rage. She's full of suppressed emotion. She is the story of the suppressed feminine through that feeling, through that congestion, through that blame and vilification and demonization, being told she is a vampire when she is the caring maternal essence. So Black Moon Lilith is like all this congestion, distortion, power that then ultimately becomes released into this embodiment of this raw feminine wisdom and essence. Well, Asteroid Lilith is like that light at the end of the tunnel that's leading her back to herself, that's allowing for that resurrection through a recognition of that original light, that original spark. So you'll want to check out Asteroid Lilith. And in my video description, I'll put all of the links to get access to this information for free. Black Moon Lilith, Asteroid Lilith, the nodes of any planet or asteroid. You can get any of this information. Check out the video description below. So Asteroid Lilith is that original feminine wisdom and essence in the natal chart by house sign aspect. That's going to be where we have had that experience, going way back to matriarchal times if we were there, and where we are a holder of this, where we can be integrated and aligned with that inspiration that can be very creative, very charged, very progressive, very liberating. That is Asteroid Lilith, the original primordial feminines. We're going to see a very highlighted Asteroid Lilith in the chart of prominent revolutionary feminists. Joan of Arc, people that were really powerful women. These are our Liliths. These are our matriarchs. These are our Dakinis. And again, this is an archetype that across cultures, across tradition, we have the demonization of the original feminine creatrix, which is one with sexual reproductive rights. So in India, all this stuff went underground, for example, through the left-hand tantric path. And India is full of historic patriarchy. Was it always patriarchal? No. Did it become patriarchal? Almost all traditions and cultures across the board did. Buddhism, Taoism. It was a nearly global phenomenon, patriarchy. And it's fascinating to historically see that there are these similar patterns happening in completely different places, just like how we see pyramids in different places. Well, we are all interconnected. The astrology is going to give us a map for that interconnection. Now, the planetary north node of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto for all souls is in Cancer. Again, a link below, you can look up where these nodes are in your own chart. Say you have your own moon in Cancer or other planets in Cancer aligned with those planetary nodes. That's going to be the signature of being an anchor, holding a space for that wisdom that is needed by and large by our species. That signature says, in some way, shape, or form, you're holding a doorway open to our species evolution. So this new moon in Cancer is on the north node of Jupiter, saying this time collectively, July 2022, is the lunar month for us to be holding open the doorway to our species evolution, which is going to be a doorway through emotional feeling, processing and digesting the past, which is going to be what? Largely the processing of a tragedy. And here in the United States, women are mourning this de-evolution, this wave of memory of the past, which is the old circa 15th century Pope rearing his ugly head and restricting women's autonomy, restricting women's freedom, restricting women's reproductive rights, which is striking the chord of patriarchy, going back thousands of years, when men created these original societal structures that were still imprisoned within by restricting women's sexual and reproductive rights. That's the chord that's collectively being struck. This new moon on the north node of Jupiter, joined with Black Moon Lilith and Asteroid Lilith simultaneously, is the time to remember, to feel, to digest this collective his story. And yes, it was his story up until now. But as we're purging, as we're releasing, as we're remembering, as we're mourning, let's also remember, resurrect, and recall that this feeling, yes, even this mourning, is the feminine, resurrecting, regenerative potency. This is the most powerful prayer. When we look out at the world, where we truly allow that tragedy to come into our field and break our hearts via the pain, the suffering, the injustices that we see by and large in the world. Highly maternal, empathic souls will automatically feel that, and their hearts break open. And what outpours is the empathy, the emotional feeling of that tragedy itself is the prayer. The Divine Mother with the capital M is that essential force which is feeling it all. That is the moon. That is the Great Mother. She is feeling the tragedy of humanity. She is feeling the story of all human beings. All of her lost children are known and felt by the Divine Mother. And her heart breaks, and she reaches out to all of her children. I am still here. I am present within you, within your womb, within your body, within your emotional feeling. As you allow your heart to break open, you are one with my open heart. And now we are releasing the eternal juices of grace, of mercy, of the inconceivable regenerative potency of spirit itself. That's what we can remember. That's what we can return to. And when this primordial feminine essence remembers, recognizes herself, resurrects herself, which is all a part of her potency, well, there ain't going to be anything that stands in the way. None of these men, none of these oppressors are anything but dust in the wind. When we allow this process of regeneration to go through the whole cycle, to go through the whole story of death, damnation, the gateway to heaven, becoming the devil, becoming scathed, profane. Oh, those sex workers. They're so corrupting the youth. They're separating spirit and matter with all of this profanity. But what if we respected sexuality? What if we respected sex workers? What if we saw sex workers not as being villains, but as being those holding the original feminine essence of regeneration? What if sex workers aren't what we thought sex workers were at all? What if we're talking about high priestesses and the ancient lost matriarchal lineages? What if we're talking about more than just penetrative sexuality, but using the energy, the essence of creativity and life itself to regenerate? And there being unlimited ways of doing this. And what it looks like on the surface, there can be so much more going on beneath the surface. This is the truth, the mystery of the divine feminine. That original creative force which was damned and demonized, tainted, made profane in the world by and large, and in ourself, where we shoved ourself down, where we damned ourself, where we thought ourself inappropriate for our own sensitivities, where we thought ourselves a complainer via our own awareness of what others would not be aware of, where we stood up for what others dared not to stand up for. And when we were vilified or crucified or burnt at the stake, that is where we were becoming initiated into the power, the potency of Lilith, the regenerative capacity of the human species. This is where we will pick ourselves up through remembering this truth and this potency, then there will be no more projection, no more damnation, no more us throwing the baby out, us throwing the treasures, the gems of all life out. We can remember this. We can polish that gem. We can know that this life is a circumstantial reality. This is the wisdom of Cancer. We don't judge a situation a million miles away from it through these one-size-fits-all expectations, obligations, rules, and regulations. That was the fall of our species. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not good guys having a holy crusade versus bad guys. It's a circumstantial reality. You have to meet the person where they are. You have to know the situation. You have to know where the people are coming from. You have to listen to them. You have to know their past story. You have to listen to their childhood experience. And then we will have an awareness of what to provide, what to teach, how to care. This is not a punishment, taking away from, put them into prison, make them pay a fine, improving our species, healing our collective from trauma. No, that is where we repeat the downfall. That is where we repeat the dark ages. Let's use this mirror of the collective and recognize these dynamics in ourselves. We are our own patriarchs. We are our own oppressed mother and child. What needs to be provided? What education is missing? How can I show up and care? When I learn the wisdom of regeneration in myself, I can go into my own hell realms. I can go into my own scariest recesses and clear that out and come back born, renew, revitalized, fresh. Those souls who awaken this capacity in themselves, you are the healers, you are the teachers. That is the evidence. You don't need to go get a diploma. The proof is in the pudding. You have that capacity of regeneration in yourself. Woman, you have that capacity of regeneration in your womb. Once you recognize that power, now you can go into the fields of others and, like an air filtration machine, clear out their hell realms, clear out their muck. That is the most respectful, the most admirable, the most compassionate and inspiring thing that a soul can do. That is the work of the Divine Mother. The Divine Mother feels the pain and suffering of her lost children, and she, being the fountainhead of all life itself, the fountainhead of all creativity and freshness, she's not afraid of losing her regenerative essence. She goes into the darkness and the hell realms to bring that regenerative essence there. I hope this provides some useful reflection so we can all be aware of where we find ourselves in time as a species. This work is taking place on the individual level. Again, if you'd like to learn about these bits and pieces and where the macrocosm connects to and reflects your own individual life and experience, you may want to talk to the others in my Astro School. It's a very exciting phenomenon and reality to be alive. And thank you for the opportunity to connect with and share with you today. Take care, my brothers, my sisters, my mothers, my fathers, my sons and daughters.